G'day folks, ZD here. While you're waiting for some much needed Path of Exile update news, here's something to help you sate your action RPG looter cravings, you absolute addicts, like I know you are. Dark Hunting Ground is a straight to the point, minimalist action RPG, Diablo-like or indeed Exile-like, if you prefer, which I do, as it definitely has many Path of Exile inspirations. I'll give you a quick pros and cons overview, and then I'll jump into a showcase of the build that I've ended up with, which is quite a bit fancier than what you see in the initial footage here. I wanted to show my progression up to that point as well. No plot or campaign to play through. There's no story to grind your way through here to get to the real meat of the gameplay. You just jump straight into killing monsters, looting and upgrading your character. And on that note, new customization layers come at you thick and fast in this game, with lots of different systems and layers of things to try and make an actual build here, and there's a lot of build freedom indeed. It's got simple but good feeling combat, with quick maps and short boss fights for that fast dopamine cycle. It's got the option for endless maps for non-stop grinding at endgame as well, so you can switch your brain off and watch something on your second monitor if you want. It's also got surprisingly deep build customization too, with the ability to mix skills and passives from a bunch of non-restricted classes. You can really cherry pick things from all these different archetypes and create your own build, like I've been working on a Spellblade, for example. The Path of Exile style support system for skills is pretty deep and flexible, and there's a substantially build modifying relics system in place of gear, so rather than just like pants and body armor and stuff like that, all of your items are relics and they all kind of do something impactful. Everything is craftable in this game, with some good degree of deterministic control as well, so whatever relic or skill or like support gem or whatever, you can add randomized affixes onto those and help shape those and improve those over time. The game has a cat that picks up whatever loot you want it to, and you can set that in a control option menu. And the cat also auto salvages junk for you as well. One of my absolute favorites when I saw this, an option to adjust the transparency of player skills. I quickly found that my proc-based Spellblade was becoming a bit much, but I was able to knock down the transparency to 50% or lower, as I felt like I needed to so that I could still see monsters and enemy attacks. It seems to have a pretty active development so far. It's pretty recently released and it has an active beta branch right now, with what they're working on looks like a Paragon leveling system that will be added to the game soon. So it's being expanded and improved upon. And all that's for $15 Australian, just about $10 US, and it's got a free demo, so you can kind of check it out and get a pretty good idea of what the game is trying to do here. Oh yeah, and one more thing, the game has a training dummy. And now the cons, it's got a pretty crangled English translation, so you have to kind of read between the lines and figure some stuff out for yourself. There's enough there that you can understand the mechanics of how things work. It's mostly just like a readability perspective. The game has some quality of life issues. For example, you cannot open a menu without first closing the currently opened one. Like you can't easily swap between your passive skill tree and your inventory without like pressing multiple buttons. And then probably the most major thing is that the skill and build balance is pretty wild. I'll show you my build after a couple changes I made after this to turn into like a full Flickerstrike menace. Overpowered builds can be a good or bad thing depending on your perspective. I found it pretty easy here to make something pretty OP feeling, and that brings me to my final con, which is kind of the main point, and that's that the game is just ultimately a bit too easy. It's lacking challenge for action RPG veterans, I think. So this is me at this point in the footage, playing the highest available difficulty hunting grounds that I can possibly do. And at this point, I'd only just barely begun to optimize my build. In order to actually increase the difficulty further, I needed to grind 4 sets of 4 essences to do 4 bosses, and then a major boss, the Chaos Avatar again, and then that lets me scale the difficulty up a pip. But how much of a jump that is, we'll see a little bit later in the video. So I think the ability to more quickly find an appropriate difficulty to play in would be a great modification, so you're not stuck grinding that easy content for a long time to scale things up if you're doing well, which is kind of a classic action RPG issue. A lot of games fall into this problem. So if you're pretty good at this genre, just be prepared for maybe it to be a bit too easy. Overall, if you don't want to watch the rest of the video, I can firmly recommend it as a $10 game. It has a lot going for it and is quite fun to play, and an adequate distraction from some of the reviews. It looks like up to 100 hours. So that's the overview. Now let's jump in and I'll show you my Flickerstrike Mind Over Matter Spellblade build, as well as, incidentally, a bit of a closer look at some of the game's systems. Okay, so I'm just ready for the final sets of bosses, but I'll jump into just a regular hunting ground for a moment. So again, this is playing on like the highest current difficulty for me. There are these kind of map modifiers that you can apply, but they mostly just seem to make things easier or more rewarding for you. It'd be good maybe if there was some sort of pro or con system here, like upside downside, make things harder but get more rewards. Something like that would be good. Let me go ahead and upgrade some things here. And these are all craftable too, as you can see, they've got different rarities and all that. Anyway, getting sidetracked, let's jump into here and I'll show you my Spellblade Flickerstrike Menace. I have gotten it to be click and hold one button. Technically, I can press some other things, but actually all I really do is hold down the flask key to make it permanently active for a speed boost. And then my character flickers between packs, hitting them, triggering lightning strike, triggering magma orbs, which is triggering each other. Those two things chain trigger each other. And I also pop flash every so often for a big buff to my damage and mana. And to reposition if I really need to. And I am gap closing with charge on my main skill. I'll show you the skill setup in a second. And I am auto-castering Mikiri here, which acts as like a defensive take no damage and heal skill that teleports you behind monsters as well. So I barely even have to aim. Occasionally I have to aim kind of at the enemy here. I just have to remember to kind of like use my mana buff every so often. So that's a little bit of a look. It's going quite well. Oh, I don't know if I actually get the loot if I leave too early like that. That's okay. My cat was too slow. I'm getting too much loot now. Alright, so let me give you a bit of a look at this and then we'll check out some of the bosses as well. So the main skill I'm using is from the warrior tree over here, slash just basic choppy skill, because it gives you the fury buff. Each time you hit, you gain a stack of fury up to 10 of them, and that also triggers multiple hits once you stack those furies up as well. And fury gives you more damage per stack, basically. So we're going to be pushing and scaling that and using that as kind of like a trigger conduit with some elemental conversion and elemental procs in order to deal lots and lots of damage. So we have lightning strike first, and we can use the target dummy here. And I can show kind of in isolation potentially if I take off magma, for example. So this is just lightning strike triggering. The basic skill itself is just the slash. When you see if I aim towards an enemy and we're too far away, we dash in close. That's thanks to the charge skill. I had a basic version of this, but I just found a legendary version too. So a nice little upgrade because it also has a fair whack of extra more damage on it. And then we add the magma skill here, which I have lost track of. Where are you? There it is, magma. And magma, whenever it hits an enemy, does 3 magmas that burst out, dealing fire damage. And the fun thing here is that they do keep triggering each other. As long as the enemy doesn't teleport or move out of range and get missed by any of those hits, it'll actually just keep going. And then we can make it trigger a lot faster. Basically at maximum trigger rate. With our attack speed here, we easily hit the maximum trigger rate, which is limited by the support gems themselves. Pretty effective. I'll actually disable the dummy because that will just keep going in the background. We use Enlarge to help the magmas hit more enemies, but also because Charge has a maximum distance, which is 4, but Enlarge actually scales that, so the charge distance we can see down the bottom is 5.2 instead. So if I turn this dummy on, I can actually like teleport from like nearly across the screen. The maps only get so big, so being able to teleport that far is basically to any monsters anywhere on any map pretty much. So that little bit of extra range boost is quite nice for that. And then we can kind of use any extra damage supports here, and I have more slots to unlock to add more damage. If there's any more trigger things that can drop later, I haven't checked. I'll probably add those as well. I didn't find any extra triggers just yet that made a lot of sense. But the interesting thing is with this cold, right? So it's cold conversion. This, in theory, converts the base cold of the skill, but I'm already using in a passive skill tree another conversion. But it still works, and it works really quite well. So we go from 4,000 lightning damage on the basic attack, right? To 2,800 cold and 2,400 lightning. So we kind of... There's some scaling going on pre-conversion and some non-double converting going on. that allows you to kind of get split damages, which is really good because we can stack lots of different ailment effects. So I can chill and do some other ailments that I'll show you in a bit, and shock from the lightning, so I can get multiple ailments going there. And you'll also have fire from the magma, so we can get ignites going as well. So we can scale from effects that deal more damage based on how many ailments the enemy has on them, and we get to stack a lot of those to amplify that damage up further. So that's feeling very powerful, and I was using kind of some other manually casted skills earlier on, like Frost Nova and stuff, but, well, just Nova, I turned it into a Frost Nova. But this ended up being so powerful that I wanted to kind of just go all in on supporting this as much as possible, and as soon as I can afford to do so, we'll unlock some more slots. Oh, I can! Amazing! Let's see what else we could use here. We have some options. Hidden Arrow has kind of like, I think, maybe a bit of a low proc rate / not high effect. Doesn't really add to the chaining all that much. So it does like a little projectile. It's kind of hard to see in there. It's just like a little extra arrow projectile in there. So it's only a 1 second proc rate. It does seemingly a decent amount of damage, but I think we can probably do more powerful than that. So the arrow is how much damage? 2,200 cold and 1,800 lightning, which is a bit weaker than the basic attack itself, so probably not very good on a 1 second cooldown. We could just add more AoE. We could add more speed. Fast here is going to be quite good. This has some area damage. I could probably fix those modifiers on that to make it a bit better. I wonder what happens if you stack charge. A lot of things seem stackable in this. Doesn't seem like it affects the distance or anything. Sometimes the effects of stacking are a little bit more subtle though. Like, you can stack 2 lightning strikes. As far as I can tell though, it just increases the damage, but that's actually pretty good. So that goes from 3,800 lightning damage to 8,700 lightning damage on the lightning strike. So that's probably a pretty good one. The good thing is, if I really wanted to try and optimize this, I can use this targeting dummy to do so. So I could certainly just wail on it, get all my buffs going, and then find out what we're doing. So we're cooking about 270,000 DPS, 280,000 DPS. Looks like might creep up towards about 300k. So I could try and use that as a benchmark and see what I could beat that with. And mess with some of these other skills. We can use, and I have tested some things like multiple projectiles. That is an option. It only really affects the magma orbs, but ended up being kind of a net positive. But it does have a less multiplier for the rest of the effects, so if our lightning's doing a lot of damage, that might be a little bit weak in the end. So critical rate would be probably maybe one of the biggest things I could do at this point, actually. I'm starting to scale crit now. It's got some good damage scaling on it. Let's have a look. 240,000, 270, 300,000. We peaked up at 300,000 pretty quickly there. So it's definitely more damage. Yeah, 320,000. So that crit does look like it's winning out. Yeah, alright, cool. Although I notice I'm not seeming to get my focus stacks for some reason. Why am I not getting my focus stacks now? So that's interesting. We'll talk about that in a second. Alright. Figure out what is causing the focus stacks to not work. So, on the gearing side of things, well, let me finish the rest of the skills first. Sorry for being a bit disjointed. So, Imkiri is this skill that normally you activate and it gives you a short duration where if an enemy hits you, you teleport behind them and slash them, and you become kind of immune to damage. You heal based on the damage you take. So that's quite powerful as a defensive skill, but also a nice little way to gap close and get on top of enemies, get behind them, nothing personal. I set it up with release on hit. So when I hit enemies with slash or any of its other effects, if it's off cooldown, it triggers. And since this would be annoying if it wasn't for the fact that I have charge now, which allows me to kind of stay on top of enemies without needing to like reposition. So the fact that Imkiri is kind of just proccing constantly is really good because it means it's that defensive layer is just up most of the time. And I've been trying to reduce the cooldown and increase the duration by stacking whatever. So I'm like using lightning here because it's got skill effect duration on it, right? So if I can get any skills that can increase the duration and lower the cooldown. So I've got skill effect duration here. I don't have anything on this one yet, so I'll have to re-roll that. I've got cooldown recovery here. So if I can stack those enough, I can get maybe that cooldown time, which is 1.9 seconds now on the right there, down to pretty close to the actual duration of the buff of 1.24 seconds. The lower I get it though, if I'm getting hit constantly, even better. So the lower I can get that cooldown, the better. The cooldown's probably the more important thing there. But otherwise I've got frozen, so I can freeze enemies whenever that triggers as well. That can happen once every like 4 seconds for normal enemies, or bosses for like elite enemies every 8 seconds. It doesn't work on actual bosses, but that is okay. And then the last skill we have is Flash, which teleports us and then gives us Infusion, which gives us a huge amount of mana recovery. It's like 25% of your mana per second or something. And that's very powerful, and I scale a bunch of things with that. I have 2 stacks of haste on here, so whenever I use it, I get 2 stacks of haste up the top. And then that gives me a bunch of skill speed. And we have, and I can use it often enough that I can actually just maintain maximum stacks of haste too. If I just keep triggering it, you can see I have 3 stacks and it just maintains the 3 stacks. So that cooldown is kind of working out nicely there. Then I got like a little heal here, not that that's super necessary, cooldown use. And we can probably just add some more supplemental cooldown things, or recovery-based effects, or buff stacks, or whatever on those ones there. So let's talk about the gear that I have so far. And the relics could do with probably a fair bit of work, but one of these here is that when I chill an enemy with cold damage, they also become weak, lowering their speed. So that's another elemental debuff as well. And I've added electric orb, which makes it so that when we shock an enemy, they also gain fragile, which makes them more easy to crit. I've got limit principle here, which is a relic that makes it so if we're using skills from 3 different classes, which we are, we've got warrior, hermit, and scholar. So when we're using that, we get 50% cooldown recovery. So that's very powerful for Makiri and Flash, obviously. I've got Threat Chain here, which is just more damage if you're close to the enemies. Also, it's got some nice damage and mana regen on it. And then Stand Still I incorporated recently, and it sometimes works really well, but I'm not sure. There's some issues with it, it seems. It gives a stacking focus, which is crit rate and crit damage. Very powerful for DPS scaling. And you can see if I do something, I very quickly go up to 10 focus stacks, but it did seem that teleporting doesn't remove the buffs, right? Normally when you walk, you immediately lose your focus stacks. So the idea is that it's like a risk reward thing where you have to stand still and attack, but it seems now that maybe the charge support or the lightning trigger or something, it looks like it's the lightning trigger, something is refreshing and removing the buff, whereas that wasn't happening before. So I'll have to try and troubleshoot that, or it could indeed be a bug, which I might have to report. So I'm not sure what's causing that, but a lot of the time I was actually maintaining those buffs, so I'll have to try and figure that one out. But when it was working quite well, where I was getting massive crit rate and crit damage buff, and because all of my movement was teleport based, there's been some builds in Path of Exile that did things like this. You never actually count as moving when you're just teleporting. As long as you don't actually physically take a step, you just could maintain full buffs of that. So that was kind of the idea, and it was working for a while, so we'll see if we can figure that out later. We've got this one here is not super important. It's kind of like a spreading of elemental ailments, but I can probably do better with some of these other skills maybe. So we'll take a look. I wonder what happens if we stack multiple standstills. Probably get increased focus effect, I suppose. So we have some other options here. Adding an extra projectile could be good for the magma orbs. Let's have a look. How good is having a training dummy, right? Look at those extra projectiles. Oh my god, it looks better than I expected. Okay, that's immediately up to 400k DPS, so that's a big improvement. Very nice. Yeah, we're still not getting those crit buffs, so I might have to replace that relic for now until I can figure that one out. I thought it would only be 1 extra projectile, but it seems to be maybe 1 extra per projectile? So it's even better than I thought. Oh my god, okay. And you can stack a lot of these relics too. There's no real restriction against you kind of using multiple of the same relic. So if I wanted to use, as far as I can tell it works. Let's actually test here. I'm testing a lot of this stuff live because there's lots of nuances to discover with this game, which has been making it quite entertaining. So my cooldown here is, let's have a look. Cooldown time, or cooling time, 1.74. If we take a look at that and add another one, does it go down? Cooling time, 1.74. So it seems that it does not stack that particular effect. Interesting. I've had other ones that did stack, but this kind of does seem like a unique one-off sort of mechanic. So it seems that that second limit principle isn't working. So in that case, we'll want to try and find something a little bit better, perhaps. There's some cool ones here that modify how skills work. So Mana Ball, which is just like you lob a little orb at enemies, turns into Meteor with this. And there's a few things like that. So I might be able to find something for Slash later on, which I haven't found yet, that'll allow me to modify how Slash actually works. So that could be quite interesting. Ordinary Faith. I thought I had one of those. I must have gotten rid of it. We'll just keep with Threat Chain for now. That looks pretty good. Oh yeah, I was using one of these for resistances, but didn't need it in the end. So those are the relics I'm using currently, and it seems like from looking at the crafting menu over here, that there are quite a few more relics to discover. All of these locked ones I haven't had even one of yet. So there's quite a few more interesting relics here, and we'll have a lot of things to potentially mess around with. So on the other character progression side of things, the talent tree here is your passive skill tree effectively, which allows you to scale basic things like damage and mana, resistances and stuff, but there's some more interesting ones where you get some combined effects. So chance to apply elements goes into elemental element effect, scaling things like shock. And then like these mana nodes down here have Mind Over Matter, damage taken goes to your mana instead, and there's a large amount of it there, and there's a smaller amount of it there that you can get. And then as you spend sets of 15 points in each of these trees, you unlock these major nodes, which you have a choice of. So I've taken this mana one, which scales Infusion to give us more damage and speed, but also a bunch of mana. This one here was quite good as well, but I think the mana overflowing is working really well with the next one, which is Body of Mana, which gives us 80% of damage taken goes to mana. So we have like 100% of damage taken going to mana now, thanks to that 80% plus 15 here and 5 there. So some of this is actually redundant. It looks like I could probably drop maybe this one and still be 100%. So I'll tinker with that later. But that effect is extremely strong defensively. This one is very strong offensively if I wanted to do that instead and go Glass Cannon. Each elemental element on target makes you deal 15% more damage. With the amount of elements we have now, which is like 5 or 6, that's a lot of extra damage. So that's a significant boost. We could probably even just test this on the dummy right now. What were we, around 400k? I wonder how much of a difference this one makes. 450. Looks like about 500k potentially. Yeah. Easily getting up to that 500k mark, just shy of it there. Oh yeah, there we go, crossing the 500k mark. So that's a pretty big damage boost as well. So I've gained like 200k just in the process of talking this out as we slightly more optimize things. But I think that survivability from Body of Mana has been ridiculous. with focus recovering so much mana, and my max mana scaled, nothing has really gotten my mana all the way down in quite some time. So, and I've barely invested in things like resistances or other survivability forms. And I have a pretty decent life pool on top of that. So if it ever does get through that mana, I'll have the life as a backup defense. So for now, I'm working on the warrior tree because I want to come up and get 15 points spent in here to get irritable, to give 15 max fury, 50% increased fury effect, so 3% more damage per stack. So that's a significant boost, and a bit more scaling there. So that one's going to look very strong, I think. I'm only 1 extra point away from that. For now, I can put some skill speed in, but there's some other interesting things in here too. If I recall correctly, I saw some nodes down here somewhere that looked kind of interesting. There's some melee, oh yeah, there's max fury down here and melee attack count. Not sure if we get enough points to go to the bottom of 2 trees. I heard the max level is 50, but you do get over here in the cultivator, these extra points. So there's a bunch of extra talent points here, and we can save up and eventually get those to get a few more things. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to get down the bottom of the tree. So one of the other progression systems here is that you get this spirit, which is kind of like, I guess, a reservation system for these buffs that you can toggle. So right now I've got like skill speed here, and it costs 10 and then 20 and then 40 for the last buff of that spirit. So I can spend that spirit bar in these nodes here. So if I needed to kind of like between hunts adjust and say, oh, I really need more mana, I need more survivability or whatever, we could invest in that there. We've got things like resistances and stuff if I need to do that as well. Interestingly, not a speed option, but lots of good defensive ones, including avoiding ailments or more damage of specific types. There is actually cooldown recovery, which I might consider maxing right now instead, because that's going to be quite powerful with Nkiri, which is now 1.6 cooldown. So that's pretty strong. So we can increase our spirit bar as we move up the tree as well. You also unlock extra relic slots through here too. So that's what lets us equip these last couple relic slots as we progress. And you unlock that pretty early on. The other thing is obviously the crafting system here. So you can make anything that you've previously found up to that rarity. And then if you want to upgrade the rarity, you can go up to epic. You can only find legendaries as drops, but if you can go up to epic via the enhancement system with these red crystals that you get from killing bosses. So if I'm like, oh man, this frost orb thing is amazing, I want to enhance this, then you have a chance of success each one you spend, and it goes up as you fail. So you're inevitably going to succeed, but it's just how many boss kills is it going to take you to get there. Usually 1 or 2 in my experience to get to epic, but that kind of depends. So on top of that, we can transform, which is how we modify the skills of them. So let's pick something and I'll just make it better. We're probably going to change stand still. So we can do the cores, which affect our mapping, or we can do our various supports. So I like the idea of maybe improving the critical rate one that we just added. It's actually really good, so maybe a different one. It's quite well rolled as it is. Normal resistance, max life, damage over time, effect speed. So we just added this extra projectile relic, actually. This one's a pretty good example because those normal resist is pretty good. So in theory, I could lock that in. But I have not been struggling on survivability, so I might be willing to re-roll that. So recast lets you re-roll the affixes. Refine lets you kind of randomly modify their tier. So this is normal tier, and then obviously there's green, which has higher stat values, and then purple, higher stat values again. You can go up to the rarity of the actual item itself, which is, this one's epic purple. So these ones are both epic already, so they're quite well rolled, but this one's very low. So if I refined it, it would allow me to maybe get purple on this with some luck. And then carve, which is to divine or to alter between these ranges. So if this was rolled 9, for example, I'm like, oh, that's really low. I could do transform here on the carve, and I will randomize in that amount. So we might land 14 or 11 or something. So in this case, what I would probably do is I'd lock this and then transform, since this stat is pretty good. But you'll see something interesting. In order to recast everything, and this is a really brilliant system actually, in order to recast everything, it only costs 1 common void crystal and only 100 of the void breath, right? So there's resources, very low resource cost, almost free basically at this point. But if I want to lock this in and only modify these 2, I'm doing a more deterministic craft, but that costs me more. I'm now spending a good void crystal, which is a little bit more rare, and 500, which I'm actually going to feasibly run out if I blast this too often. That's still probably the best option. But then let's say, oh, I actually love that life. I lock it in, and now it's going to cost me a purple and 2,000. So like you can do that a couple times maybe, but that's getting really expensive at that point. And that's the case for each of these different options. So that's a really like brilliant system for like a cost scaling based deterministic crafting. So let's try and modify these 2. So I'll do transform here. I haven't seen what start order does. Chance to shock. Maybe not bad, but let's go ahead and change that. Summons aren't useful for me, so I'll go try again. Normal damage. I'm actually not sure how normal damage works in this case because I think it works pre-conversion damage scaling. So in theory, maybe that's pretty good, but I might see if I can roll 2 stats that are a bit better. 4% elemental damage, so that's like a bad rarity. Shock resistance, they're okay. Flask duration, well, I'm already permanent flasked as it is. Melee damage, regenerate mana per second. Okay, so the mana regen per second is very good. I might be willing to accept that, or I could try and re-roll this last one. I think I'm pretty happy with that, honestly. So if this rolled white though, and it was only like 0.5% mana regen per second, then I would try and refine it. But as it's already very good, I don't actually need to do that in this case. So I'm pretty happy with that one for now. Melee damage is okay. Mana regen and normal resist both seem very good. So that's a successful craft there. And you can go through and craft each of your different support skills, the slates, or the relics, which is the gear, or indeed the cores. So I've got a Fortune Hunter one here. Or is this, oh, this is crafting, I should say. What do we have? We did find a purple one, nice. So this has got event rate, monster cold resist, XP from elite monsters. I like the event rate. I'd probably go ahead and try and modify the other ones. Drops from elite monsters, monster lightning resistance. So you can make them take more damage effectively from you there. Scent from elite monsters, that's our progression speed. We might want that one. Drops from normal monsters. That seems fine, but they're all green, and any of them could be purple if I just do this. We rolled whites mostly. Drop some normal monsters. Let's try again. Oh, there we go. Much better. I might be willing to leave that last modifier because it's not very good anyway. So 14% and then 6 to 8. So in this case, maybe I would lock this and then just carve these two, since this one doesn't even matter. I can try and get a better roll on this one, except I'm broke, so that'll have to do for now. So this goes in the hunting grounds down here. I'd take one of these ones that's maybe not very good, like possibly this last one. And I'd put this on drop quantity, void breath getting, event rate, sent from monsters. There we go, some nice mapping action. Let's take it in and do a couple bosses. So I haven't done this one yet at this difficulty. We'll see how it goes. So if I do this boss, I'll get the last of the chaos sense I need to take on the big kind of final boss, which will upgrade the difficulty tier of my campaign. So let's see how this guy goes down, which is very fast. So like I said, I have to grind out content that's a bit too easy for me now. So that boss has mechanics, you'll just have to take my word for it. I could actually go straight into the next boss there. A quick 10-second kill. Sure, actually let's go Chaos Avatar. So I spend 4 of these now. So this is the big boss, but I presume I'm probably going to kill it pretty quickly as well, given that given the power level I find myself at right now. So the first little phase here, you fight the Windows symbol as it spawns monsters. It was a pretty cool boss fight, actually. I was reasonably impressed with this. It's like, I feel like they've put some effort into making some cool design bosses in this game. And I do appreciate that. Like, I love that it's like a simpler game, and yet they've still made an effort to make some, pretty cool bosses. We can let my auto flicker manage the ads while we kill the Windows symbol, and then the old school Windows, and then it's the real boss itself, which gone down pretty fast, but we will actually see some of its mechanics here this time around. And plus, I can't quite... Oh, okay, so that's probably the one thing that it can do to kill me, I suspect. That ignite, that big orb that it shoots out, does a lot of damage. So that's the one thing I have to manually dodge, I dare say. Now, I was taking some serious damage there. My mana almost dropped fully. Looks like all of its regular attacks we can basically face tank, though. I think the laser will be fine, too. Like how I'm just like... Oh, okay. Except maybe right at the end there where I auto-charged into the laser and stayed on top of it. No, I mean, my mana's been getting pretty low. I'm watching that mana bar. I might have to like back off a little bit sometimes. Is he gonna do his orb? Yeah, there it is. It's a nice mechanical skill with good signaling though, so it's pretty easy to manage it if you are actually paying attention. But I actually have to pay attention here, unlike where I'm at with the regular gameplay right now. Let's just make sure we don't sit in the laser this time. The multi-proj spam there is crazy. I definitely see that one chunk my mana bar a bit more. I don't really see the life bar dip yet though. It's looking good for our Chaos Avatar kill. Yeah, very nice. Very nice. I mean, that was a little more challenging than I expected. That gives me some optimism that maybe this next difficulty will be pretty good. It did take a little minute for me to grind up there. Each time as we unlock a new difficulty, we get like new things that can drop as well. So all these new legendaries can drop. Unique dashes form changes to clash. Movement skill cooldown. Is any of these slash changes to sweep with melee skill range? I like the sounds of that. So that's, I can find Slaughter Axe now, maybe. I don't think I've found a Slaughter Axe yet. No, I haven't found any Slaughter Axes. So that's kind of exciting. Let's have a look then what the difficulty is like now that we're on 2 skulls. Well, first though, I want to show you one more thing, because there's a whole other system, well, a couple other systems. There's this flask upgrading system. So I've got my flask set up right now for crit rate, skill speed, and dodge chance, with flask effect scaling here. And the cooldown time is 4 seconds and the duration is 4.5. So I just hold Q and the flask stays up, giving those effects. There's actually a relic that acts like Mage Blood where the flask is always active at a reduced effect. So if I couldn't just do this, that would be pretty strong. But since I can just do this, I do like this build your own flask system though. It's pretty good. You can do all sorts of different things on your flask and mess with the duration and cooldown and everything. Make it a powerful heal, make it more defensive. So there's this just once you get to endgame, you get this kind of like hunting system where as you hunt enemies, you level up this bestiary of all the different enemy types. So I haven't done any of these like major elites yet. Oh, yeah, and I've done this one here, Corrupted Spirit for skill speed. And then you can, as you progress, you can unlock these slots where you can put these enemies into. So I've got skill speed, resistances, mana, area damage, cooldown recovery, and I've probably unlocked some more since then, so I can see what options there are. Nothing else I don't want there. I do have regen 5.5% of your life per second. Wow. 12% cooldown recovery. Don't mind if I do. We'll drop area damage. I actually have some bosses too. Gain 1 cross on using a skill. Deal more damage for each cross. Remove cross on using the same skill repeatedly. Okay, not for us. Chance to chill. Hitting an enemy with chill, remove the chill and cause an icy explosion. Oh. That sounds very good too. Okay, I just discovered more customization options. Aha. Deal more damage on low life. Not gonna happen. Apply lightning and energy. Like I said, a little bit of Krangle English. So this one triggers a thunderstorm. I probably need to test each of these, but let's just chuck on. Oh, it looks like, I need to actually unlock the boss Atlas slots for this. So total Atlas level has to get to 60, and then I unlock the elite slot. So I can't use this one yet either. Yeah, I can't use this one yet. So I need to get to 60 points. So that's basically like having gotten 60 levels of these, I believe, of the various things, which is just kill more things. You don't need to think about that too hard. But it might mean that if you want a specific effect, you might want to grind that enemy type in hunts, or more specifically probably the bosses. So for now we'd probably just stick with some of the area damage or something then. Perfect. But that's that whole extra system. So we can go into another hunt here. Let's go Nirvana Wings. I have enough points for that. And then we can have a little bit of a look what the hunting ground looks like at this difficulty level too. So 2 skull version of this gives slightly more of the red crystal reward now, which is used for upgrading rarity. And that's very useful for getting much better gear. It's a little firebird, and in its first form here, it kind of just hangs out, but then it dies and turns into an egg and rebirths because, oh yeah, it's a phoenix, right? Oh, I took some damage. Oh, my health was going down. Yeah, it looks like I would actually need to invest in some resistances probably here. And, oh, okay. Okay, the difficulty is shot up a little bit then. That's a good sign. Okay, good. It looks like the difficulty scaling is there. It just takes a little bit, it's just a little slow to unlock. But that's good. It seems like that would be a very solvable problem though. I just have to actually get some defenses now and not have 9% firers. Which would obviously make a big difference on that. Let's see what the actual kind of mapping, the hunting ground is like here. Very briefly. Looks like it's probably going to be still kind of an unnoticeable difficulty creep here. It's probably mostly the bosses where I feel it at this point. But yeah, it looks like the game is just softly suggesting that I start getting some defenses now. Or, you know, more offense, so I insta-kill them. That's always a strategy, right? It's good fun though. I'm very impressed with the layers of customization. Dev's obviously a fan of good action RPGs, and there's lots of good and interesting interactions here, and I think they're pretty well thought out. And they seem to be working on it actively, so as they refine balance and add more systems and stuff, it's going to be a fun game for the price for sure. So definitely check it out, and I hope you enjoyed this little look at my build here. Oh wait, hold on. It looks like we just got this. Max Fury stacks? Well, I guess we have to look at our DPS now with this thing, right? Let's see what we're up to now with the 15 Fury stacks. Oh my god, an easy 600k. 600 plus? 620? 630? 640? 660? 7? Can we break 7? Can we break 7? Oh yeah, there we go. 700k. Over. And that's, I still have to replace that crit relic since it's not working currently. Okay, we're on our way up to 1 million DPS. I'm going there. You folks have a good one. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye. Quiet, you.